our discussion focused on a discussion about the role of the athletic association and the possibility. We would discuss with the council the possibility of having the role of the athletic association expand so that those neighbors who are involved in the athletic association have more responsibility in advising the council on the condition of all of our recreational facilities, and that they would be involved in the assessment of the fields, the tennis courts, the basketball courts, all of the passive and active recreational facilities, and sort of work in the way that our planning commission works in advising us on matters of zoning and building, as they would work in advising the property committee on matters of the facilities. Outdoor facilities.
Bob, I think you mean the rec board, right?
Excuse me, the recreation board. What's the thing, the athletic association? Sorry, the Narberth recreation board. So they would function. We think that we would like to discuss the idea of expanding their role in advising council and having a more active role, sort of in addressing issues that have historically been addressed primarily by the property committee, only the property committee. Finally, an update on 201 Sabine Avenue. Council has, our office has sent out requests for proposals for new property management and brokerage services. We got 2 back, and at this time, I think we would, actually, Mr. Metric, could you address if there's a decision that needs to be made, or if it's already been made?
I suggest we meet in executive session and discuss which group we should go with, and discuss that decision and get that decision made sooner rather than later.
Very good. So maybe on Monday we could have a brief executive session.
Yes,
do that.
move forward.
Who knows about the elevator situation? Mr. Martin will take that.
The final punch list for the elevator installation at 201 Sabine will be walked through tomorrow, about 12:45 p.m. and 1 p.m. We're anticipating and have contacted preliminary folks from the Commonwealth so that the inspection of the new elevator can take place by Thursday of next week.
Great. And then the update on the Sabine Avenue leases, it's my understanding that all of the leases have been negotiated, and the actual discussion about those leases with council needs to be done again in executive session. Okay. So all of the leases, including the New Horizons lease.
Okay, great. Well, maybe Monday night we can discuss that as well.
Yeah. And I don't know the date for the December meeting. Do you, Charlie? And do you have anything to add?
Charlie, do you know that?
No, just to note that I believe it was Councilor Tevlin-Moffat who noted that, in order to pursue grants and other funding sources for our parks and recreational facilities, we did have some sort of, parks and recreation entity, and it was actually Richard who had the breakthrough. You have one, and shame on us, the property committee, for not giving more direction and the council generally. So we're going to take it up again in our next meeting to see. We've got some very interesting, very knowledgeable folks on the rec board who could probably push that agenda forward, and we'll keep working on how to do that. And we'll welcome the rest of council's thoughts on things that we could work with the rec board on to give us advice, council, and other activities that they think we need pursuing.
That's great. And just to echo your acknowledgement of Councilor Tevlin-Moffat, she actually has been thinking about the fact that there really are 2 aspects to property. There's the recreational facilities, and then there's the buildings, and it makes sense to perhaps have sort of separate entities. And she saw the connection between having that board and the possibility of getting grant money. So thank you. And just echoing what you said, Charlie. Thanks.
Thank you. Building and zoning, Councilor Weisbord again.
So we did have our meeting on Monday night, December 7th. We've been working consistently since early fall and are committed to the possibility of saving the church, the original Baptist Church of Narberth on the south side. The church has been vacant for nearly a decade, I believe, and has been in some disrepair when it was purchased from the previous owner this past fall. In order for the owner to use it as a mixed-use property rather than solely residential, he approached the council and the planning commission, subsequently the planning commission, and asked us if we would look at the possibility of creating an opening where where our future adaptive reuse of these civic institutional buildings might be used for both office and residential. The committee felt that it was an important thing to look at. We've worked through several iterations with the Planning Commission. We held a public hearing on an earlier draft, got a lot of feedback from the public about what they felt wouldn't work, which is primarily a concern for an intensity of use, an intensity of concern for vehicular traffic as well as parking, we feel that the Planning Commission probably has addressed these issues pretty well in the latest iteration of this ordinance amendment to Ordinance 984, and we'll put that on the table during item 11, other matters. We'd like to introduce it and schedule a hearing.
Okay, great.
And as for the update on the form-based code, the Planning Commission looked at council questions from our last month's meeting. The main question that we were asking was whether or not they could give us their thinking around the virtues of leaving porches open or allowing residents to enclose porches. And they did provide us with a letter. I think all of you have been copied on that, or you should get it. And when we have many more council members here to discuss the issue, I think we should have that discussion at that time.
Hopefully Monday night.
Hopefully Monday. And we also discussed at our meeting the issue of teardowns again. We have asked our solicitor to give us options for how to manage teardowns, how we would manage notification, and whether or not there was any possibility of creating a moratorium or slowing down, delaying the process, creating separate permits. And what it comes down to is, in order to tear down your property, to tear down the building on your property, you are required to have a separate permit already. And the borough is required by Pennsylvania law to give a 15-day to respond to and approve that permit within 15 days. And they're really beyond notifying residents, which we can do voluntarily and the office has offered to do. There isn't really anything we can do under Pennsylvania law to delay or prevent teardowns, and short of creating historical districts. And that's something that could be discussed.
Okay.
We will have our next meeting on the third Wednesday of this month.
Third Wednesday? It's just for a date on it. It's going to be the 16th. That will be next Wednesday, a week from today. Go ahead.
With regard to the 15-day window,
Yes.
is it possible for, while we're deciding this, to make a practice point to not issue that permit until the 15th day? That's the available window.
Is that a possibility?
If
It
it
takes
takes
15 days, but not to give it the same day. I mean, it seems like it could be.
It's really administrative matters, so I think we could.
Well, while we're hashing through the delay issues with regard to it, perhaps once we understand that a permit comes in, as a practice point not to issue it till the 15th day, please take advantage of that time period.
I mean, not administratively, I don't see why we couldn't do it.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just the purpose of maybe delaying it. There's certain things you need to check and make sure are being done in terms of assessing the site for utilities being shut off, assessing the site for hazardous materials, and making sure that the neighbors are notified of any extenuating dangerous circumstances. And those things take time.
I imagine,
Yeah.
but it's not a necessary delay, it's an allowable time period.
It is an
from the
allowable
1st to
time period.
15th. So if we get a permit on Monday, we count 15 days to be issued, we're still within the allowable time period. So while we debate
Is
whether.
there any disagreement at the table to asking the borough office to take the maximum allowable time?
I would just say, as an administrative matter, if we're going to go target the very last day of the allowable period, I defer to the office to make sure they got kind of an ironclad system for tracking that.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't want to target the last day of the period and then just accidentally have footfall because of the way data got entered at the front end.
Well, how about we indicate our desire to have it be as late as possible in the period and allow
Yeah.
the office some leeway to, make
There you go.
decisions based on holidays and weekends and,
I think-
the site itself, the needs of the permit.
Right.
And we want notification of the public to be part of that process is, yeah, so that from the date, can we do that legally from the date of the filing, begin public notification, or can it only be made public after it's been issued?
I'll check with the solicitor on that. I think an application can be, is public
I believe
knowledge.
so as well.
Once it's complete, etc.
The only thing I would suggest is make sure we're consistent, so if it's a small matter like a sidewalk versus a larger matter, all of them are posted maybe in some way, so that we don't get accused of any particular.
Yes, right, got it.
We've reached a point in the meeting, I would just like to point out that it's 8:27, we have a council member that needs to leave in about 20 minutes, at which time we will lose our quorum, and the meeting will end, and we have some business that we do need to attend to. Before we can attend to it, we must have public comment. So I'm going to call on economic development and parking ad hoc. If there is
30
anything that
seconds.
cannot wait till Monday night,
No, our next meeting is this, economic development, the next meeting to discuss the Inside Out program with Philadelphia Museum of Art will take place in this building, December 18th at 9:30 in the morning. Finished.
okay? If you like public art, come to the meeting.
I like art.
Councilor Silio, anything for parking?
No, and I'd like to note that I don't believe we have a meeting on the calendar. And offline, I'll get with Bob, because we should try to have one by the end of the year. I'd like to target late next week if possible, and try to make a decision on that in the next couple of days, so that we can give the public plenty of time to have a calendar. Just want to see if we need one more time this year to close out some open projects.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Grady, do you have anything?
I'll defer to Monday.
Okay, thank you. So it says public comment is 12. We're going to flip-flop 12 and 11. That's a typo. I'm not going to make a